Welcome and thanks for joining for this guide on a better way to budget. My name's Jeff Clark and I do comprehensive financial planning for my clients at Redwood Money. And the topic of this video is so important for you, whether you're a client already or you aspire to be a client one day, or you're just found this video on YouTube, because the reality is budgeting is the engine that fuels your financial plan. As your money comes in and it goes out, the most important thing you can do is make sure that you capture some portion of your money to fund your future. And all the people who have done great things with their finances are people who are able to somehow corral their financial picture and set a course and then follow that course to achieve their specific goals. And budgeting is the way to do that. In today's video, I'm going to quickly run through a reframing of what budgeting is, that it doesn't need to be this restrictive thing that's telling your money where to go. It actually can be liberating, where it frees up money for your most important goals. Then I'm going to walk through a 3-step framework to building a budgeting habit that'll work for you, because I've seen it work for me and for my clients. I'm going to finish with a demo of my budgeting solution to really practically walk through some of the things you can do to massage your budget, and then end with a few next steps that my clients can take in order to actually implement budgeting and build this important habit. So let's jump in with one of my favorite quotes on budgeting from John Maxwell, a famous business author. He wrote Good to Great, and he says that a budget is telling your money where to go instead of wondering where it went. And I love this quote because so often my clients, this is what they say about the need for a budget. It's not that they're really excited to budget. It's that they look at their income and then they look at their bank account statement and they say, where did all of the money go? I'm not really sure. And it's not uncommon for me to meet with a prospect and for them to sheepishly say, one of the biggest areas for improvement for me is just figuring out how much I'm spending. I don't even know that number. And what a budget does is it gives you a sense of your income, your expenses, what you need to save, and allows you to then funnel that money, channel it towards the things that are most important to you. So to further reframe this topic, I want you to ask yourself the question, what is budgeting? What comes at the end of this phrase for you? Budgeting is ... For many people, this is something they say it's restrictive, it's a hassle, it doesn't work. But what I know to be true as a financial advisor is that, first of all, budgeting is a skill that anyone can learn. And I've put on the screen this picture of a kid riding a bike with training wheels. And I love this picture because I can't even really tell if she's happy about this. But if you've learned to ride a bike, you know that it doesn't come super easily, that at the beginning you're really wobbly. It's a skill that you develop over time, and maybe with some assistance from technology like training wheels, it gets you to a point where finally you can get balance. But after you've developed that skill and you can ride a bike, getting on a bike and riding it, it becomes second nature. And budgeting is that way too. It takes some time to acquire the skill, but once you have it, it allows you to accelerate towards your goals much faster than you ever could have before, and to achieve things that you didn't know were possible. And so it takes time, but it is so worth the time invested. The second thing that budgeting is it's strategically spending and saving. Instead of just spending and saving sporadically, saving whatever's left over, it allows you to look ahead and say, what is most important? What's coming up for me that I really want to spend money on, or that I really want to save for so that I can spend later, and do that with a strategy as opposed to haphazardly. Because what I can guarantee for you is that somebody has a plan for your money. If it's not you, there are advertising companies that they want to make sure that you don't save any dollars for the future, because if you spend on their product right now through that Instagram ad, through that YouTube ad, well, that's going to pad their bottom line. So I would encourage you, because somebody's going to have a plan for your money, why not have that person be you, so that you can make sure that that money you work hard for is actually working hard for you and doing the things that you want it to do. The third thing that budgeting is it's a way to fund the future that you want. This is near and dear to my heart because when I graduated from college, I joined the workforce at a church, and I moved to the Bay Area, which is one of the most expensive areas in the world to live. And I was making not a ton of money. I had student loan debt, but I knew that I wanted to be able to live in the Bay Area without a super high Bay Area income. And so I had to live on a budget. But in the first couple of years after I graduated, through developing some really strict budgeting skills and clarifying what I wanted to do, I was not only able to pay off $28,000 of student loan debt, I was also able to travel, to do some things that I loved. I got engaged, I got married. There's all of these fun things I was able to do, but I was only able to do them in a responsible way by building a clear budget. Now, a decade later, budgeting was instrumental in being able to build this business, to buy real estate as an investment, and to do the things that my wife and I wanted to do with our lives. And so I can't emphasize this enough. Budgeting isn't something to restrict you from doing what you want to do. It actually frees you up to do the things that you most want to do. And the fourth thing is ultimately, to that point, it's aligning your money with your goals, whether those are short-term goals, which you want to do this month, or they're long-term goals, which you want to do decades from now. A budget allows you to make sure that you're treating yourself while loving future you. As you think about that, hopefully that makes you a little bit more excited about the idea of budgeting, and you can think of things that you want to pursue. But where people get hung up is they're excited about the results of budgeting, but they don't know how to actually go about the process. And so I want to walk you through an easy budgeting progression, 3 steps of building a budget that are kind of 3 different philosophies that naturally flow one into another, that will allow you to quickly develop a budget, but then stick with it long term. And the first step in this progression is step 1 is spending analysis. And this is all about facing the numbers. This isn't even a budget per se. It's actually just about developing awareness by tracking your expenses. And the way you do this is you can, of course, download all of your statements and you can put them into a spreadsheet, or you can look at them from your statements. But I think the best way to do this is through software. This has never been easier with automation, and yet so many of my clients would say, I don't really know how much I'm spending. And maybe it's because a husband and a wife are spending in different accounts. They've got different checking accounts, or maybe you just don't look at it frequently. You make sure your credit card balance isn't too high, you pay it off, and you get on with your life. But with software, what can happen is now all of those transactions can be uploaded. You can view all of them in a comprehensive view across all of your accounts, and good software will even categorize those transactions for you. What that means is that spending analysis isn't about fiddling with spreadsheets. It's actually something where 90% of the time is getting insights from the data instead of 90% of the time being putting the data together. Now, spending analysis, one of the drawbacks is that it is backward looking. So it's not planning for your future. It's looking back at your past and what you've done. It also doesn't include your income. And so you can see your spending, but spending is really only most valuable when it's in the context of your income, because that tells you, am I spending more than I'm earning or less than I'm earning? What spending analysis ultimately does, it allows you to non-judgmentally face the numbers, see exactly how much you're spending, and it reveals areas for improvement. And where this is important is if you don't just take a look at your spending in advance, you might build a budget that's really unrealistic. But once you've analyzed your spending, you get into the second step of the progression, which is zero-based budgeting. And zero-based budgeting is all about, after learning how much you're spending, creating a plan. Because I can guarantee you, when you look at your spending, part of you is going to be appalled. You're going to be like, I cannot believe that we spend that much on that category. Or I can't believe I'm still paying for that subscription that I haven't used. What zero-based budgeting does is it creates a plan for every dollar before the month starts. So instead of being backwards looking, this is forward looking. You look at how much income you're going to have, and then you budget those dollars. So it's your income minus your expenses, minus any savings. You want that to equal 0, and that is why it's called zero-based budgeting. Dave Ramsey advocates this strategy. He calls it giving every dollar a name in advance. And what this does is it makes you much more efficient with your spending because you have to say in advance how much you're going to spend. And there are tools you can use to help with this. He recommends an envelope system where you take some categories and you only pay for them with cash. But I think the most important thing here is that you'll create a plan. And I'm just going to give you a spoiler. The first few months, your plan is going to go totally off the rails. You're not going to be very good at this. It's going to be like getting on a bike and trying to ride for the first time. You're going to scrape your knees. You're going to lose your balance. You're going to feel uncomfortable. But the most important thing is that you create that draft budget at the beginning of the month. You review it at the end of the month, and you do it again for the next month. What this will ultimately do, creating this zero-based budget, is it'll free up money for your goals through intentional planning, and it'll force you to start making trade-offs between the things that are most important to you, or even finding ways, which is my favorite, to get the same value, right? You get to go out to dinner, or you get to take that trip, but do it by creatively spending less. And many of us don't do this when we're stuck in spending analysis or we don't have a budget, because it doesn't matter what it costs when you don't have a plan. But a zero-based budget forces you to give every dollar a name, acknowledge how much you want to spend and save, and make sure that you're not overdoing it in either of those categories. So I love zero-based budgeting. Now, what I will say is that it's kind of like a crash diet. And so for many people, after some months of zero-based budgeting, they lose momentum. And what I like to do is to harness the momentum from zero-based budgeting to then create something that's a little bit lower maintenance. And this is kind of the ultimate step that I want to create for clients, which is called a reverse budget. And reverse budgeting is all about making that plan that you created with the zero-based budget automatic. And it's called a reverse budget because most people, how do they think about money? Well, money comes in through their income, and then they spend, and then they save whatever's left over. Well, a reverse budget just reverses those last two categories. Instead of starting with spending, your income comes in. Now, first you automate saving for your goals, those long-term things that oftentimes maybe don't get that attention. And then you spend whatever is left over. This allows you to spend guilt-free. It's a super low maintenance solution. It's what I build for most of my clients, where we take some portion of their paycheck and we automate sending it to a 401k or an IRA or a taxable account or an HSA. And then it allows them to spend the remainder guilt-free. And we set a certain amount in their checking account or their emergency fund that becomes an indicator to make sure that they're never going too low in their bank accounts. Now, because I said that way, you'll notice this is best for people who have their spending under control, and they may already have a positive savings rate. And I think it perfectly balances treating yourself now with loving future you, making sure that future you is totally taken care of. And so I like this as a progression because what spending analysis does is it allows you to quickly see areas for improvement and to non-judgmentally just check out where the money has gone. Now that informs your zero-based budget, which creates a plan, and it helps you to quickly find some areas where you can cut the fat in your budget and you can find big wins. But after you've found those, then you automate the smart decision of saving for the future that allows you to spend what's left over. And then periodically for clients with a reverse budget, they may notice, hey, I'm falling into some bad habits. Well, that creates an opportunity to just treat this as a cycle. You go back to reviewing the numbers, you create a more realistic budget, maybe off of a new income number or some new change in your life, and then you automate that new plan. So this is an easy budgeting progression that you can follow. And now I want to walk you through how you can actually do that in your budget. Because this video is getting a little bit long, I'm going to do this budgeting demo and then talk about next steps in part 2, where I finish up on this video on creating a better way to budget. So thanks for watching, and then jump into part 2, where we'll get into the demo and talk about next steps for building this habit.